Good morning. It's Friday, May the 7th, and this is The Drill. I'm Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, welcoming all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers wherever you may be. So today I'm going to be reading the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, of course. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then more from the book Live Not by Lies. And it's an absolutely outstanding book. I can't recommend it highly enough. And I'll explain more about that later. But for right now, we're going to go right to the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare. In the name of my Son, you will dry up the seas of demonic power. Do not fear the sea or the demonic spirits that dwell there, for I am the one who commands the sea and its streams to run dry. I will turn rivers into a wilderness, and the water springs into dry ground. I will cause the dry land to spring forth into water springs and make a place for you to dwell. I have come to cause waters to burst forth in the wilderness and streams of the desert. The parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. My highway of holiness shall be there, and you will walk on my road, for you are my redeemed child. Everlasting joy will be on your head, and you will find joy and gladness, as all your sorrow and sighing flee away. Prayer declaration. Father, you have dried up the rivers and seas that the enemy brought into my life to bring me to destruction. You have opened the waters of the deep and destroyed the enemy's threats against me. You have established your highway of holiness and have set my feet upon it. I will be found there, and I will walk with you in joy and gladness as your ransomed child. So all of this comes from Psalms 107, chapter 107, verses 35 through 37, and Isaiah chapter 35, verses 6 through 10. And we say amen. And now we're going to go ahead. Let me get set up for our Live Not by Lies reading here. There we go. And, oh no, I don't want to do that. Let's try it again. Here we go. There we go. Now we're set up. Okay, so now we go ahead and go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Very good. Thank you very much. And now on to the Live Not by Lies. And we are in a chapter in which the author is talking about how it is that totalitarianism takes hold in a society. And so one of the people that he has is that he is quoting. Well, one of the ones he's going to quote here is George Orwell, of course, but Milosz is a scholar that he quotes often. And but anyways, he's saying that in essence, what goes on in a totalitarianism is different than authoritarianism, in that authoritarianism is simply political, whereas a totalitarianism covers every single little detail of life, how you think, everything. Okay, and that is the way things are, I don't want to say shaping up in this country to be that way, because that gives the left way too much credit. But I'll explain more on that later. I'll have more comments on this. Now, we're at the last part that I read was the therapeutic as the postmodern mode of existence. So he's saying that we're living right now in a time of the therapeutic instead of Christian. We're encouraged not to be Christians, but to live a life of therapy. So, and now this new, as I quoted yesterday, Kettman and the Pill of Murdy Bing, I said yesterday, I don't wonder what the heck that's all about. Well, we're about to find out here. So, it is difficult for people raised in the free world to grasp the breadth and depth of lying, required simply to exist under communism. All the lies and lies about lies that formed the communist order were built on the basis of this foundational lie. The communist state is the sole source of truth, period. Orwell said in 1984, quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command," unquote. Under the dictatorship of Big Brother, the party understands that by changing language, newspeak is the party's word for the jargon it imposes on society, it controls the categories in which people think. Freedom is slavery, truth is falsehood, and so forth. Doublethink, holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them, is how people learn to submit their minds to the party's ideology. If the party says 2 plus 2 equals 5, then 2 plus 2 equals 5. The goal is to convince the person that all truth exists within the mind and that the rightly ordered mind believes whatever the party says is true. Orwell writes, quote, "It was as though some huge force were pressing down upon you, something that penetrated inside your skull, battering against your brain, frightening you out of your beliefs, persuading you almost to deny the evidence of your senses. In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. It was inevitable that they should make that claim sooner or later. The logic of their position demanded it. Not merely the validity of experience, but the very existence of external reality was tacitly denied by their philosophical theory. The heresy of heresies was common sense," unquote. In our time, we do not have an all-powerful state forcing this on us. This dictatorship is far more subtle. Under soft totalitarianism, the media, academia, corporate America, and other institutions are practicing newspeak and compelling the rest of us to engage in doublethink every day. Men have periods. The woman standing in front of you is to be called he. Diversity and inclusion means excluding those who object to ideological uniformity. Equity means treating persons unequally, regardless of their skills and achievements, to achieve an ideologically correct result. To update an Orwell line to our own situation, quote, "The Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command," unquote. Many Christians will see through these lies today, but will choose not to speak up. Their silence will not save them and will instead corrode them, according to Millows. In his writing about communism's insidiousness, Millows referenced a 1932 novel, Insatiability. In it, Polish writer Stanislaw Witkiewicz wrote of the near-future dystopia in which the people were culturally exhausted and fallen into decadence. A Mongol army from the east threatened to overrun them. As part of the plan to take over the nation, people began turning up in the streets selling, quote, "the pill of Murti Bing," named after a Mongolian philosopher who found a way to embody his, quote, "don't be worried, be happy," unquote, philosophy in a tablet. Those who took the pill of Murti Bing quit worrying about life, even though things were falling apart around them. When the Eastern Army arrived, it surrendered happily, its soldiers relieved to have found deliverance from their internal tension and struggles. Only the peace didn't last, quote, "but since they could not rid themselves completely of their former personalities," unquote, writes Millows, quote, "they became schizophrenics," unquote. What do you do when the pill of Murti Bing stops working and you find yourself living under a dictatorship of official lies in which anyone who contradicts the party line goes to jail? You become an actor, says Millows. You learn the practice of ketman. This is the Persian word for the practice of maintaining an outward appearance of Islamic orthodoxy while inwardly dissenting. Ketman was the strategy everyone who wasn't a true believer in communism had to adopt to stay out of trouble. It is a form of mental self-defense. What is the difference between ketman and plain old hypocrisy? As Millows explains, having to be on all the time inevitably changes a person. An actor who inhabits his role around the clock eventually becomes the character he plays. Ketman is worse than hypocrisy because living by it all the time corrupts your character and ultimately everything in society. Millows identified 8 different types of ketman under communism. For example, professional ketman is when you convince yourself that it's okay to live a lie in the workplace because that's what you have to do to have the freedom to do good work. Metaphysical Ketman is the deepest form of the strategy, a defense against total degradation. It consists of convincing yourself that it really is possible for you to be a loyal opponent of the new regime while working with it. Christians who collaborated with communist regimes were guilty of metaphysical Ketman. In fact, says Millows, it represents the ultimate victory of the big lie over the individual's soul. Under the emerging tyranny of wokeness, conservatives, including conservative Christians, learn to practice one or more forms of Ketman. The ones who are most deeply deceived are those who convince themselves that they can live honestly within woke systems by outwardly conforming and learning how to adapt their convictions to the new order. Millows had their number. Quote, they swindle the devil who thinks he is swindling them, but the devil knows what they think and is satisfied, unquote. So that's the section for today of Living Not by Lies. And tomorrow or next, I might do an episode tomorrow, but definitely the next episode I'm going to be reading the section called Living in Truth. So this is an outstanding book, and Living Not by Lies. And I highly recommend it. Go into Kindle and download a sample of it. And that way you can get a good idea of what it's all about. But I think it's $15 to buy it. And that's a little on the pricey side. Actually, a little bit cheaper than what they used to sell hardbacks for. They're selling them for $20, $25. So you're actually getting a pretty good deal here. And considering the content, that the content is right on, I think I see it as a bargain. So don't hesitate to get the book, hardcover, or getting an electronic Kindle version, but please do go ahead and get the book. Back in a minute. Thank you. So again, it's an excellent book. It's relevant. It's current. It was written recently, Live Not by Lies. And it is what every talk show host, every Hugh-Hewitt in this country should be reading and discussing and getting into. Because we see the attempts by the left in this country today to do the very things that are being talked about in this book, to create newspeak, where, again, you have people that say that are trying to suggest that 1 + 1 = 2 is simply political propaganda, and that it's white people that are in charge, therefore it is white people's political propaganda. And so that's straight out of Orwell, that's straight out of this book, and this is what they're attempting to do. Now, I don't see it succeeding, because, again, it's just too easily not succeeding as a revolutionary force. You'll notice that in the book what he's talking about is that when totalitarianism takes hold or comes upon a people, then you have, of course, because they can force you. Once they have all the people with guns, the military, the police departments under their control, then those people will do as they're told. The police will arrest you if you don't conform. The military will either arrest or kill you if you don't conform. Now, the situation we've got in this country is that the post-Marxists are trying to do this backwards. In 1917, when you had the Russian Revolution, they used physical force, to do, to have their way. Yes, there was Ketman and all this psychological mumbo-jumbo, but it was backed with reality, the reality of the bullet. In this country, they're trying to do it backwards. They want to get in your psyche and try to convince you by hook or by crook to want socialism. They're trying to condition you to want and accept socialism. So, but it's not going to happen because, for obvious reasons, reality is inescapable. No matter what you do, you're going to operate within a realistic framework. So, It really was going to end up, the only way they're going to be able to even attempt to succeed is old-fashioned Marxism, and that is the use of force, going out and getting guns and trying to shoot your way into power. And then after you get into power, then you can go ahead and try to psychologically bully or abuse the people under you. That's not even going to happen because the left turned its back on Marxism. Marxism is dead. Post-Marxism is now dead. So that's really what you're watching now on the news is the death of communism, period. Marxism, period. Whether it's Marxism or post-Marxism or post-Marxism or whatever, it's dying. That's what's happening here. When you have revolutionaries, people that think of themselves as revolutionaries showing up for the revolution, but they're carrying umbrellas, showing up for the revolution, but they make sure to bring their smartphones, show up to the revolution with other types of technological things. And also, by the way, none of these folks are armed, or very few of them. There's one or two people that show up to these revolutions with firearms of any sort. Most of the time, they're not. They're using Molotov cocktails, and then half the time they're setting themselves on fire. So, and these are part-time. The only reason you're seeing what you see in Portland over day in and day out is because of the lockdowns by the governors and the federal government paying these people basically to destroy their own cities. What is this? The old saying, you don't poop where you eat, and that's exactly what these folks are doing. I have no sympathy, by the way, for people in Portland, Seattle, or anywhere else if they put up with this. There was something on YouTube about that there was again another one of their daily revolutionary struggles in Portland, and a driver who had been blocked because the buttholes decided to block the street, and so he's going to turn around and leave or go the other direction, and somebody tried to knock him out. One of the buttholes ran over to his car and tried to knock him out, apparently. I didn't see the video. That was the caption of the video. I didn't want to watch it. I don't need to see it. But I have no sympathy for the guy. You decide to live in Portland despite what is going on. Every right-thinking person in Portland should be gone. Should leave, flee. Even the mayor of Portland, his life has been threatened. And this is the guy that lets it happen. The mayor that says stand down to their version of the military, their police department. Stand down, don't do anything, don't arrest people, you get what you deserve. One of the things I also find interesting, I wanted to bring up, is that whenever you're seeing protests in other parts of the world, usually you're going to see them as a last resort. But if they really want to break up the protest, they bring out the water cannons. They have these tank-like vehicles. Usually they have, instead of treads on them, they have tires. And they come out in the street and they have a turret with a barrel sticking out of it, so it looks sort of like a tank, but instead of firing projectiles, it fires water at high velocity. And if we wanted to, I'm sure we could go ahead and break these meetings, if you will, of the hardcore left up rather quickly. Again, these are people of convenience. If it wasn't for the money they were getting from the federal government, they're getting paid $50,000 a year to go out and protest and try to destroy things. And if it wasn't for that money, they wouldn't be. They'd be at work. The only times they would be protesting would be on weekends and holidays and after work. They're not going to protest any other time because it's inconvenient. They got to go to work. They have to go to school. They got to have their lattes. They got to have to spend time charging their smartphones. Okay, these aren't serious revolutionaries. These aren't people that should be taken seriously. But it is up to the people of the city of Portland or anywhere else to put this down. To say, no, we're sick of this. We're not going to put up with it anymore. We're done. So one of the ways they can do it is demanding from their elected officials that you will come out and get tough here, use water cannons, whatever means necessary to put an end to this, or flee, get out, go move somewhere else. If you stick around and you're not bothering to try to get the mayor and the city council to change this, to stop these people from their illegal activities, then you get what you deserve. You get what you so richly deserve. So, but again, getting back to the book, absolutely outstanding. This is what I've been overall talking about, is that the psychologistic efforts of the left to subvert our society, and that this is why it's so important to define your terms. Ayn Rand was on about that. One of the things that she was constantly harping about was defining your terms. Because if you leave them undefined, then you're allowing the left to control the conversation. And the left knows that if you control the conversation, you control reality and you control everything else. But it doesn't have to be that way. Left likes to ask that question. Does it have to be that way? The answer is no. We can fight them for control of vocabulary. One of the things that we can do is quit analyzing the unanalyzable. There is something that the idiots, the idiot hugh-hewitts of the world want to call cancel culture. There's no such thing. Cancel culture doesn't exist. The left created this fiction in an effort to realize one of their fantasies. They want a cancel culture to exist. Okay? And they want people to fear it. They want it to have power. And the way they know that the way to do it is to come out with this vague slogan, cancel culture. Doesn't it have a nice little ring to it? It's alliterative, cancel culture. And get people to discuss it. If they can get people, the hugh-hewitts of the world, to analyze it. What is cancel culture? What does it mean to be a victim of cancel culture? And once you start analyzing it, and then, better yet, once you start resisting it, coming up with tools and tactics and techniques to resist cancel culture, you realize their fantasies. You end up doing their work for them. And again, this is why I say the left talks big smack about, well, we got to destroy the Republicans and the conservatives because they stand in the way of paradise. And in reality, they have no such intention. Okay, because our job on the right is to reify their, to reify their dreams, their hopes, their ambitions. It was Martin Luther King Jr. that had a dream. It was Congress and the Republicans in Congress that helped to make it a reality, not just a dream, but something by creating the laws, reifying it. It took the Republicans to actually reify that dream. So, but that's the way the left operates. Create a fantasy and then get your right-wing buddies to reify that dream for you. How do you do that? Simply by, again, creating catchy phrases, names for something, and then the right will do, it will destroy itself. The right will simply, the hugh-hewitts of the world thinking they're smart. Hugh-Hewitt thinks he's a shrewd guy. He's on top of this. Boy, he's going to figure out what cancel culture is and analyze it and then find the antidote. And what he doesn't realize is he's creating the very enemy he's trying to destroy. Back in a minute. Thank you. Slogan of the day. The United States of America is paradise. There you go. That sums up my when I'm talking about making the presumption for the status quo. The left wants to create paradise. The left says, oh, no, it gets up every morning and it looks around and it says, oh, no, look at all this crap here. This is all crappy and no good, and we need to create paradise. We can create paradise. People are perfectible. Society is perfectible, so we need to get busy and do it. The essence of saying, the way to challenge that is to say, the United States is paradise. Prove to me otherwise. Okay. Too many times we have a situation where we have everybody hates the United States of America. We have, every once in a while, people on the right will get misty-eyed and tear up during the playing of the national anthem. But the hugh-hewitts of this world hate the country. Okay. Because all they spend time doing is criticizing it. It's too far left. There's too many abortions. And I got to remember I have a little thing about abortion that I got to get to later too. But anyways, there's too many abortions. There's too much this. There's not enough that. And so we end up with two competing movements, if you will. Both of them hate the United States. Both of them think that the United States is woefully inadequate and needs to be changed and needs to be reformed and needs a revolution. The only difference between them is the kind of revolution, who should be leading that revolution, and what the results of that revolution should be. The true conservative says the United States of America is paradise. The United States of America is perfect. And I dare you to prove otherwise. I've seen on Instagram an individual that is in the habit of, he'll sit in a chair with a cup of coffee and a card table and a sign on the card table, and it'll make a bold statement like, abortion is murder. And then it says, convince me that I'm wrong. Okay, so that's the approach you got to use here. You have to make the presumption of the status quo, and the presumption means everything's fine the way it is. Everything is good to go unless we have an obvious case for change. So, the United States is paradise. The United States is paradise. I got to get a T-shirt with that emblazoned on it. But and then then it's up to the left to prove to me that it isn't. So, and that, by the way, is impossible to do because then they're being asked to prove a negative. But that's the most powerful thing that you can do. Ask somebody to prove a negative. And if it's a technique and a tactic that works for the left, it can work for the right as well. Again, all of the tactics, tools, and techniques that you hear about from Alinsky's rules for radicals, they're neutral. A knife isn't a socialist knife or a capitalist knife. It's just a knife. It's a tool. A hammer is the same way. Anybody can use it. Lenin can use a hammer, and Ronald Reagan can use a hammer. Okay, and the same thing goes with these tools and techniques of Alinsky. So, if they can try to push us to prove a negative, we can do the same thing, and that's our most powerful way. People say there's individuals out there, the hugh-hewitts, that say, "Well, we got to quit being on defense, and the best defense is a good offense." Well, this is the way to do it. Put them in the position of proving a negative. You wear the T-shirt, you get the bumper sticker that reads, "The United States of America is paradise." And you can even add on there, "Prove me wrong." Okay, so then they've got to have to prove a negative, which they can't do. But there's enough useful idiots out there that they'll try to. They'll turn themselves into knots trying to do so. But the point is, the people that want change, whoever they are, whether they're right, left, or center, have always the burden of proof. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, a word about the United States is perfect. One of the things that the left would do then is try to turn that around on you, the dynamic of it, and instead of trying to prove to you that it is not something that you say it is, and put themselves in that kind of a untenable position, is they're going to try and get you to prove that it is. Because you may be thinking to yourself, well, I come out and I say the United States is perfection, the United States is paradise. How do I sustain that? How do I prove it? One of the secrets of making the presumption for the status quo is that you don't have to prove the status quo. It is presumed. So when you make the claim that the United States is perfect or the United States is paradise, that is what you're claiming is that's the status quo. So when they come along and they say, well, what about this? What about that? What about slavery? What about racism? What about police officers putting their knee on the neck of an innocent person and killing them? What about that? They're trying to get you to prove the status quo. Don't go for it. You say, I don't have anything to prove. The burden of proof is on you, because it is. It is always on the person that wants change, because things just don't work the other way around. Again, because the people that are maintaining the status quo, if you are told to defend the status quo, you're then being asked to basically prove a negative. They twist it around on you. So, anyways, that's the thing. Don't let people. What if you? You make any type of a bold statement. The United States is fine the way it is. If you want to try, the United States is exceptional. The way they're always able to undo that is by saying, what about, and encouraging you to defend the status quo. I don't have to defend the status quo. The United States is exceptional. It's a vague statement saying it's exceptional. American exceptionalism is nothing. It means zip. It's just a vacant, vacuous statement designed to create friction. But even if you're going to use that term, don't allow the left to trick you by what-ifing you and getting you to attempting to validate the status quo, because it can't be done. Okay? You have to respond by saying, sorry, the burden of proof is on you. What proof do you have that the United States is not exceptional? What proof do you have that the United States is not paradise? And go from there. So that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and always remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.